Happy Sunday, everyone！ 各位
Happy Sunday！
星期天好。很高兴见到您，现在能够进来参加我们这里呢，美中家长亲子教育协会的这个里头有很多丰富的节目。那么今天我们就是要特别讲到，就是说小孩子们现在在这个菌感的时候呢，都是在家里头学习，所面对的不管是说在精神上面，在心理上面，在活动上面，可能都是有一些挑战。So welcome everyone. This is East Meets West, and thank you for joining us. The East Meets West Parent Education Club has continued even during the pandemic to provide a lot of resources to the community, to the parents, and to the children. And we're really delighted to say we actually have more children achieving voluntary service award during this pandemic than before. So we continue to strive for that. And of course, today it's the topic of joining up for us to learn as parents and our children who are doing distance learning. The challenges are on many levels, from the activity level, from the social level, from the mental level. So I'm sure there are going to be lots of pearls of wisdom we're going to be gathering in this next hour and 2 hours. So please stick around throughout the entire session for all the learnings. 好，那么我知道我们在参加里头有几位家长们是想要看中文的啊，所以呢，我们就是现在让您知道一下，您现在在这个 Zoom 底下哈，你有看到它里头有一个选择叫做 Chat， 您可以到那个 Chat 里头。如果您找不到的话，就是您的手机或者是您的电脑有看到那个3个点哈，那个点您按一下，那个上面 chat， 您进去以后就可以看到中文的这个基本上的翻译哈，我们是以大纲式的翻译方法哈，这样子的话，您可以一边看中文，然后一边再多多的学习英文。So we do have the chat room available mainly for our Chinese-speaking parents. And there may be some children that are still looking at the Chinese side. So please do know those are going to be available. The Chinese, basically it's going to be a topical translation. So you could see the main points in Chinese through the chat. So that's where you'll see a lot of Chinese. So wonder not, if you are English speaking and English reading, you're not missing out on anything. Those are translations. All right. So for the other thing is we do have already some Q&A that came from the parents prior to this moment. When they register, they already have some questions prepared. So those our speakers will be presenting and will be talking about. So those will be addressed. However, as many of us, because I do that all the time, as we're listening to the information, we start to have questions. So if you do have those questions, do you see that the question tab? Okay, so you can raise your questions in the question tab. So look for it in your cell phone or laptop or iPad, whatever is the device, there's an option for you to do questions. That's where you can post your questions. And for the question and answer portion, we are going to be supporting it bilingual. So when I see it in Chinese, I'll make sure to translate it so our speakers can address and vice versa. 好，那么现在就是说，当您看到这个大纲哈，然后听到这个讲员在讲的时候，可能您自己本身也会有一些的想法或者是问题。那么这一些的话呢，我们欢迎您。我们在这个每一个讲员讲完的这个段落的时候，我们就会说，请问您有没有什么想要问的？或者您在听到一半的时候，您有想要问的，那么就是按另外一个他写 questions 那个呢，您就可以打。如果您要打中文没有问题，我们可以翻译成为英文，所以这样讲员一样的可以回答。All right, so hopefully the Zoom logistics is clear. If there is any question, feel free to post on the question now. We will make sure to address it. But we are going to be jumping into our panelists as well as our speakers. So on our panelists, we have our board members, Tina. Hi, Tina. Can you wave to everyone? Hello, Tina. Okay. We have Queenie. They're the two that was mainly the ones responsible coordinating for our speakers today. And we have our founder and our executive, which is Annie. Hi, Annie Prasad. There it is. And I'm the president, Sophia Chen. So hello, everyone. We are here to assist and to address any questions that you may have throughout the entire Zoom session. All right, with that, I would like to also let you know, before we get our speakers introduced, I like to say that in the month of December, this is the month of hope. So we have lots of Christmas trees that we already see. I see people put on stockings, and that is awesome because we really need a lot of hope to make it through this year, right? 2020. So with the hope, though, alone, I don't think it's enough. That's why we at East Meets West, we come together. We come together to make things happen, to give us that positive energy to carry on during the pandemic. Many of you have already helped out with donations of masks, making the face shields, writing letters to firefighters and cards. All those are making positive influence in togetherness. So I hope that you will see our efforts in this month as well. So besides this parent conference, we also have our upcoming talent show. So our holiday talent show is a wonderful one where we are going to have the kids to be able to basically show off, whatever is their talent, okay? So they can be playing piano, they can be singing. And so that one, you will continue to receive email announcements. It's already announced, but in case you have your paper and pen and you want to write it down, it's on December 19th at 7 p.m. We're doing a Zoom concert. And we are actually also doing this live in 2 senior communities in our area. So again, we want to continue to emphasize we're working together to create and provide positive education, positive influence, positive volunteer opportunities for the community and at large. So please join us for that. And moving into 2021, we're going to have a very fun hiking opportunity. We're going to keep all the CDC guidelines. While we hike, we stay together with our own family, people that we live with, and then we will continue to keep that healthy distance, but start the year on January 2nd with a beautiful hike. That one, we're going to be doing it at 2 p.m., so it's not too hot, not too cold, because it is winter time, and not too early for those of us that want to sleep in, okay? Now, the big one, please write it down. If you already have many plans in 2021, please make sure you put the hold spot on your calendar, and that is our very fun Lunar New Year virtual gala event, okay? That one is on February 21st at 2 p.m. We will have more announcements. 很快的讲一下哈，我们现在今天，当然我们在这个2020年做了很多的活动，就是因为我们知道今年的菌感非常的辛苦，但是我们大家一起共同来协助彼此的时候，我们就会变得更强壮。所以呢，我们除了今天这个家长的这个学习会之外，我们在19号，就是这个月的19号晚上7点钟，我们也会有鼓励很多的小朋友，他们一方面等于是做义工，一方面呢他们可以弹琴啊、唱歌，然后我们这些呢会放给我们在附近有几个年长的居住的地方让他们看，那么也是欢迎大家一起来看。然后我们在2021年的时候呢，在1月2号我们会有一个爬山活动，是下午2点钟，不会太早啊，那个时候呢也不会太冷，所以呢，如果您喜欢的话，可以跟着我们会遵守所有这个卫生局所跟我们讲的一切，要保持安全。然后呢，我们最主要的，请您千万一定要把时间留下来哦，那就是2月21号的下午2点钟，那个时候呢，我们会有我们的 中国新年的活动，然后里头还会有很多的抽奖的游戏，所以您一定得参加哦，参加是免费的。So one thing I want to especially emphasize about the Lunar New Year virtual gala event is a free event, and we have raffle prizes. It's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully, even during the pandemic, you could feel how positive East Meets West Parent Education Club is. Alrighty, with that, I have the honor and the pleasure to introduce to you our two speakers. They are in the San Marino School District, and they both come with a lot of backgrounds already, but I will just briefly introduce our first speaker, Tonya El-Hendi. She's a licensed clinical social worker, and she also is special certified for pupil services, and she is the wellness counselor that was speaking to us about some of the important aspects and considerations in parent education. Our second speaker is Christine Flores. She has a master's in education specifically for counseling, and so she is the guidance counselor in the school district, and she will also be bringing out, especially when it comes to some of the mental, emotional aspects. Alrighty, so at this time, without further ado, we're right on the dot of our time. We're going to first turn over to Tonya. Thank you so much, Tonya.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I appreciate the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and put up the presentation at this time. I'm going to attempt to share. There we go. Does that look okay?
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come. And so I really want to encourage you, as a question comes to mind, please feel free to put it in the Q&A, because this is really a dialogue. We are all having different experiences, although it's a little bit similar across when we're talking about our kids and when we're looking at social emotional adjustment of our students during this difficult time. So I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit. And the topic was really to focus on that EQ, which is emotional intelligence. And so that's really how we respond in situations. And so I did put up just a brief definition. It's that capacity to be aware, control, and one's emotions. So what's really interesting about this is one of those developmental as you're growing up. And so this is one of those times where we might see during this pandemic where some of those milestones that were previously achieved, your child might be regressing in. And so they're not having as many opportunities as they had before to develop this. And what we know is that emotional intelligence is strongly connected to mental health, because it's that ability to connect others, to feel with others and to accept others and start to develop that social identity. And so when we're thinking about our adolescents, this is such a critical time for them to have all of that social engagement to help develop their independence and their emotional intelligence. And so it would make sense that up until this point, it's not fully developed. So this is where they try out new things in high school, new identities, new haircuts, new clothing, because they're trying to sort that out. And right now in the pandemic, they're not getting those opportunities. So then it comes back to the parent. So then how can the parent foster that for their kids so they still continue on that track to be emotionally intelligent adults? So here are some essentials when we think about it. It's that ability to be self-aware. So it's to recognize when perhaps you're overreacting or underreacting or your contribution in a situation. And so even for some adults, we could probably name some, all of us, where we see they struggle a little bit with that awareness of that they're bringing to the space, and that ability to self-regulate. So self-regulation is very important. And we really emphasize that when we're working with our little kids, when we're thinking about a 5 or 6-year-old as we're moving out of that tantrum phase. So that's really what that self-regulation is that we're allowed to get upset and we're okay to have our feelings hurt, but then how do we go back to our baseline? How do we return to homeostasis? And so when we think of that self-regulation, it's that ability to calm oneself down to get back to where they need to be. And so we can highlight some concerns with our kids if something throws them off and they're upset, and then they're upset the rest of the day. So what that would indicate to us is that they need some assistance in that self-regulation. Is how can they soothe themselves? How can they give themselves compassion to come back to their baseline and be able to interact how they typically would throughout the day? So then the next step is we look at that motivation piece. And so in distance learning, it has been such a huge challenge for students to stay motivated. So typically when they come on campus, part of that motivation is they don't want to sit in class or walk into class and not have their homework to turn in, because then everyone's going to look and everyone's going to know. So one of the challenges at this moment in time with motivation is it's so easy for them to hide. And so when I connect with students, I ask them, I said, well, would you go to class and not have your homework? They're like, no, but here I can just not turn it in and no one's going to say anything. And so we're seeing that students are losing motivation to roll out of bed to that desk and then connect, because they are in these very challenging academic classes without having that experience of building a relationship with a teacher or building a relationship with new peers around them. So we forget how much students would just lean to the neighbor and say, oh, wait, what question are we on? To get a prompt. Or, oh, what are we going to do this? Or when do I turn this in? Those conversations are not happening with our kids. And so it all factors into that motivation. And then especially as this pandemic continues, right? Because we don't know when it's supposed to come to a close. We were told it's just going to be a few weeks, and then here we are. And so it's really important to be mindful and reflect even on our own motivation as parents, as it becomes more difficult staying at home. The next piece is empathy. Empathy is such a critical skill that you have to learn. And you could probably, again, highlight some adults that struggle with empathy. And that's really putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And so right now, adolescents, for example, they go back to that self-centered phase. So they're very black and white thinking, and they're very self-centered. How do things impact them? And so having those discussions and conversations and relational issues and challenges with peers gives them opportunity to practice that skill of empathy and to begin to develop it. And so now they're missing that component. They might be stuck in their own empathy place, looking for it or feeling like they're not getting enough. And then, of course, we can go to that social skills. And so to be out of school, and I bet it's going to be March and it's going to be a year, by the time there's any plan for the majority of students, if not all students, to return, is they haven't had opportunities to try out things with peers. Peers are so important in developing identity, but then also helping with regulation, helping with motivation, because some of that regulation is you can't be upset all day in front of friends because your friends are not going to tolerate it. So then it forces you to develop skills to bring yourself back. And so if you think about it in a home setting, we do tolerate it because we love our children and we understand that they're upset. So there's so many things to be learned from that social interaction that is just not taking place right now. And so then it's as parents, as we see our children changing before our eyes, and it's hard for us to go, well, gosh, what's developmental change and what is because of the pandemic and being at home? So as parents, we have to figure out how do we support them in the best way possible to get them through this, while as parents, we're still dealing with our own challenges of being at home and being in this pandemic. So it's really important we want to foster that emotional intelligence, because it doesn't matter how smart you are or your IQ. If you can't emotionally connect and build relationships with others, you're going to struggle in life. You have to have an adequate balance of both. So some things that it's really important to do, and this might require you as a parent or as a family system to kind of reassess, where are you with these skills? Because you might not have them present all the time. And kids going off to school and interacting with peers offsets some of these things. But now you're the 100% provider. It's like we have to offset what the peers and what the school would ordinarily be doing. So it's really important to figure out how to start talking about emotions openly. And so there's cultural factors there, there's family system issues there. And for some, it might just be uncomfortable, or it's something that's just not familiar. It's just something that you don't do. And so what we need is for students to be able to say what it is that they're feeling, that they need to be able to put it into words. Because when they put it into words, then you can have an empathetic, compassionate discussion about it. But if they're not saying it out loud, then how can the parent know when they're struggling? And so it's introducing those opportunities to talk about emotions openly when maybe you never did before. And so that's a parent saying, this is hard for me, I'm learning with you. This is uncomfortable for me, I'm going to do my best. I might sound silly, I might not know how to say it. And so it's that opportunity to kind of reset the family system and introduce new things. So we want to be able to model our own regulation. So that's thinking of, how do we handle stress? How do our students see us handling stress? Because we need to be mindful of that. Like when you lose your cool, that's a really good one, is you need to be able to acknowledge, you know what, I lost it, bad choice, bad behavior. I apologize for yelling, I'm frustrated, or I'm feeling upset, or I'm feeling disconnected, or whatever it might be, but to own it as a parent, to start that conversation. The other thing is, are you modeling empathy? And so modeling empathy is kind of the positive way of saying, are you not being dismissive of your teen's experience? So when I mean like not being dismissive, it's if they say I'm stressed out or I'm feeling overwhelmed, if we don't dismiss it and say, well, that's because you waited to the last minute, or that's because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. Because it's not modeling the empathy for them. It's being very dismissive of how they're feeling, and we really want to encourage them to share what's going on so we can properly support them. And then what we do know is effective motivation comes intrinsically. So it's often not, punishment is not really the best way to motivate our teens. And then we want to ask and have that conversation. What does your teen need from you? And we don't want to make that assumption. We really want to ask them. So now is also a time to have fun, because we're at home more than we probably were before. We might not be taking vacations and doing those other things that we used to do. So we want to create those opportunities for engagement. So some of that is doing things maybe a little bit silly. Perhaps you don't cook a lot or you don't bake, try it on. Give your teen an opportunity to do something with you. They're going to begrudgingly do it perhaps in the beginning, but it's about reestablishing those norms and new traditions. So that's where I say, like, get your hands dirty, involve crafts. Can you do something in the yard? And to start other conversations. So I put an example of like, pick your superpower. So that's like a great thing at the end of the day, and everyone in the family share, gosh, if you could have had one superpower today to make your day easier, what would it have been? And to have those kind of hypothetical conversations, because asking them, how are you, is not an effective way to start a conversation, because they're going to say, I'm fine, I'm okay, it's fine, it's fine. So we want to come up with more creative ways to ask, because we want to create a space in our homes of vulnerability where people can share how they're really feeling, empathy. It's going to be met with compassion, and everyone is present for those conversations. So even though we're all dependent on our devices, it's so critical that our parents are also setting down our devices to create space to have those difficult conversations, or to just be present. So this one's interesting that I get from parents all the time, where we see that our kids they're just constantly on the computer, and parents say, well, this is when my child says it's the only time that they connect. It's the only time that they get to talk to peers. So that is really important. And we have to figure out the balance though. And so we have to figure out, in what way are they connecting on social media? So one of the ways to do this is we want to develop insight into our own kids so they can make better choices. And so we really want to ask, well, how do you feel before you engage in all of this social media? How are you feeling during? And then how are you feeling afterwards? Because when I talk to kids and they tell me they don't feel very good about themselves after they spent 2 hours looking at other people's stuff and chatting. And so then we really want to educate them of, how can you do something different? So I see that there was a question, do they feel depressed or anxious, less motivated after time on social media sites? The answer is yes. And prior to the pandemic, there was a lot of research of the connection between depression and online. And so if you had a child too that had any hint of any type of depressive symptoms or behaviors or concerns, or was easily influenced by opinions of peers, they're even more at risk now. So it's really important if you can kind of look at some of these things and think about, how much time is the right time, and how is that time being spent useful? So it's one thing if they're playing video games and they're chatting, but if they're looking at Instagram and they're just going through people's posts and people's likes and those other things, it does tend to bring down an adolescent's self-esteem. And there's lots of research that backs that up. So we have to try and also encourage our teens to develop other ways to communicate with their friends. Some of them need to be taught how to develop those friendships. And so I think part of that too is, again, how are we modeling that? How are we fostering our relationships as adults? What are we doing? We want to encourage our students if they want to have conversations with their friends. Let's have a Zoom date. Encourage them to pick a show to watch together, to comment on, but to find ways to engage them in doing so. I think it's really important to have a parent temperature check. So, how are you doing? How are you handling stress? Is your outlook positive? What types of conversations are you having with other adults in the home that your children are overhearing, perhaps? Because oftentimes, the number one thing I hear from teens when they say they did not share how they were feeling with their parents, the number one thing is they say, I don't want to bother them because they're stressed enough. And so, what that tells us is parents, we have to do a better job of pretending everything is great in front of our kids. We can be honest about our feelings and situations, but we also have to be forthcoming with our ability to problem solve. We have to be really like, you know what, this is really hard. I'm struggling. I'm in tears. I'm having a real hard day. But you know what, this is what I'm going to do about it. We have to model those positive coping skills. So there's obviously an impact on students in distance learning. So I had shared a little bit about the connection between the online media and depression. There's lots of research about that, and also what's happening because the kids are spending so much time in front of the screen. They're mimicking ADHD behaviors, and they might not actually have attention deficit disorder. But if you notice, and if you go into your teen's room and they might be in class, but they're playing video games, they're looking at things on the internet, they're checking their phone, they're looking at posts. So they're doing all of these things that are actually priming their brain to have attention deficit because they're not giving any one single thing their full attention. And so it's important for parents to create opportunities at home to do that. Even if it's just to sit and play cards, your kid will probably be like, why am I going to play cards? Humor me because I need this. It's not for you, it's for me. That's what I would always say if my kids are like, I don't want to do it. It's not for you, it's for me. Okay. But to create those uncomfortable opportunities where we can show I'm only going to give you my attention. And as a parent, I'm not checking my phone. I'm not looking at those things. So we do know that there is a impact distance learning has on parents. And so I'm trying to go quick. I'm trying to be mindful of the time. But really, we understand too as parents, especially from our end, you're getting bombarded with multiple emails from the school, right? Mixed messages. Your child's telling you one thing, the school's telling you another thing, and everyone is busy and you're trying to work and do all of these things. So again, it's just really important for the parent to kind of take stock and what are all of the challenges and that you're dealing with, what is right now and what could be put off till later. So that way you can create more space to do nothing with your child and to create those opportunities at home for engagement. So I think another just quick important thing to note is when to connect to the school. So the school wants to hear from you. So if you ask your child, and perhaps you're not very good at going into Power School and seeing what's going on or grades wise, or you do and your teen says, oh no, I've turned all of those things in, don't hesitate to reach out to the school or connect with the guidance counselor. Because I call parents all the time and they're like, I ask my kid every day and they say it's fine. Well, of course they're going to say it's fine because they don't want to worry you. And so it's better to have everyone work together as a team to support your child. Situation is hard on all of us, and we need to get our kids back to school. But what we need at the school is we need to have better eyes on the kids because we don't get to see them on campus. And as a parent, you need to have better eyes on the school so you can see what the school is doing to support your kid. So it would be really helpful, especially if you see any of these things, is just to facilitate that conversation. And it's hard because we're all busier than we ever were before, even though we have more time at home. Here's just a couple of resources, and I think the information is going to be shared. If you really want to focus on bringing presence into your parenting, I highly recommend the Everyday Blessings, and it's focusing on being a mindful parent. So I did include some resources through UCLA on mindfulness. That in itself could be a whole 3-hour presentation I could give you on how to incorporate that into your parenting. and how that will help just your overall mental health and well-being. But nonetheless, that is an excellent book to pick up. I think one of the best things about it is it speaks from the mom's perspective as well as the dad's perspective. So I think that that's very helpful because oftentimes I feel like books are authored from the mom's perspective mostly. And then, of course, how to talk to your teens so they will listen, and then some different resources. But I believe my email has been shared, and any follow-up questions that we can't address right now, I would be happy to do so.
Thank you, Tonya. That was excellent information. And indeed, I've been hearing the word mindfulness quite a bit. At this time in our Q&A box, we do not have any question. So if I can take the liberty of asking this, what are some of the key things to, or the tips, some of the key tips for mindfulness? 所以呢，我知道现在呢，可以问答了。那么 Q&A 这个部分呢，现在还没有人问，所以我首先问的就是说，什么意思？就是说我们要来集中我们的精神跟我们的这个心，所以我就问这个问题。So if you don't mind, Tonya.
So mindfulness is interesting, and it's oftentimes interchanged with meditation. So there's like formal meditation mindfulness practices, and then there's informal meditation mindfulness practices. So oftentimes our teens or adolescents are not comfortable with formal. Formal is really sitting down quietly, trying to clear your mind, being mindful of your posture, perhaps doing a body scan, focusing on your breath, all of those things that typically make adolescents uncomfortable. And then informal mindfulness practices are different things that you can do throughout the day to bring your awareness back to the present moment. So when we think of mindfulness, it's really about cueing our awareness to what we are doing, not thinking about what we did yesterday, not thinking about what we need to do tomorrow, but just in that moment. And if in that moment you're washing dishes, for example, then you're 100% aware and engaged in washing dishes. You're not thinking about the work presentation. You're not thinking about the homework. You're not going through your to-do list for the next 15 minutes. You are just washing dishes. And part of that is just noticing. And so one of the main practices of meditation, and if you ever listen to those formulas, they'll always say notice. Notice your breath. Notice your pulse. Notice the sounds inside, outside the body. So one of the things that we're trying to do with kids and get them to attend is some different informal mindfulness practices. There is a great book that's called How to Tame a Wild Elephant, and it's like 52 everyday informal mindfulness practices. So one of the ones that we just did on Friday to teens to introduce is hand appreciation. And we walk through how that mindfulness is just to notice your hands multiple times throughout the day. Notice how your hands are tools of compassion. Notice what they look like. Notice what they feel like. Are they cold? Are they warm? Are they dry? How your hands move without you thinking. And so there's many ways that you can kind of go through and bring that awareness back to your body. Another one that we had done is that awareness of posture, how your posture connects to your mood and how you're feeling. Because that one's really important for our teens. That's why we say don't lay in your bed to do your classes. Don't lay in your bed to study, because when you lay in your bed, you prime your brain for sleeping. You're not priming your brain for learning. But then to be mindful of your posture and how you're bringing oxygen into your body to refuel you. So that in a nutshell is kind of mindfulness is basically not that you block out all of the sounds or the thoughts, because we would like to do that, but more so that you're aware when they come in and they pass like a cloud and you're still present in that moment of whatever it is that you're doing.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to do a quick Chinese translation just because we don't have translation for this part. 所以呢，我刚刚所问的呢，就是说，那么他在后面在结尾之前的时候有讲到，就是说怎么样我们可以来集中精神哈。但是这个集中精神呢，不是只是说用打坐的方式。因为这个对小孩子来讲的话实在是太困难了哈，所以呢，他的意思就是说，当你是在做任何的事情，他说，比如说这样在洗碗哈，那所以我现在就讲一下，说，比如说在洗碗，你就是 活在当下，就是那个洗碗的那个时候，就是注重洗碗就好。然后呢，就是在想这个洗碗这件事情，不要去想很多其他的事情。那么同时之间呢，就是说，如果真的可以静下来的话，也不是说只是就静，因为很难对小孩子，尤其是比如说注意自己的呼吸，哦，吸进去，呼出来，吸呼，这样注意这种呼吸的时候，这个也就是集中在这个活在当下那个精神。Thank you so much. There is a question from the chat here or from our panel. How should we handle the emotion of kids in elementary school differently? So,
That is a great question. So it depends. So you have to assess what is their level of ability to self-regulate. And so oftentimes when we're trying to teach that to our small kids, we need to join them in regulation. So what that means is it's very difficult for us to, for example, put them in a timeout and say, calm down. If they knew how to calm down, they would have done that in the situation that they were already in. And so how we can join them is oftentimes through touch. So the most important thing to help them regulate is to get to below their eye level. That's critical. And then to just reach out and touch them. And so if we can model a calm demeanor and we can just listen, it doesn't matter if they're making zero sense or if they're totally wrong. It doesn't matter. What matters in that moment is to connect relationally. That's it. Then later, when their brain is back online, when their prefrontal cortex is now working again because their emotions have calmed down, then you can have a conversation about the behavior you didn't want to see. And oftentimes in that situation, they can see it too. So I did have a resource. Let me click back to it. And I didn't include it here, but as far as like parenting tools, um, oh, I don't think it's on there. Well, childmind.org. Oh, yes, I did. It's the third one. It's Dr. Dan Siegel. He authors many books about brain development and how to raise children. I have probably read 6 or 7 of them and engaged in many of his lectures. So he really talks about the best book for the foundation. If you're only picking one, is called The Whole Child Brain. And it really teaches you how to understand when your child is dysregulated as a parent, how you need to help them regulate and connect.
Thank you. Awesome. So allow me to do a quick translation again. 所以呢，这个问题就是说，那如果是比较小年纪的，就是在小学的这些小朋友们那么他们的情绪在发作的时候，我应该怎么办？那么我们现在呢，就是听到我们的讲员说，首先你不是要去纠正他，去跟他讲道理，因为他在情绪在发泄的时候呢，或者他情绪不好的时候呢，你首先最主要的就是要跟他能够连上线。那么能够连上线的方法就是蹲下来，在他的眼线，不是你在站着他坐着，而是你是跟他想同等的这个眼线的时候呢，然后去摸他，去接触他。他说这样子的话，你跟他就是在同一条线，那个时候他就会感觉到说他的感觉你是已经可以感受到了。那么从那个情绪在发作的当初，到你去碰他，然后呢让他能够情绪慢慢缓和下来以后，你才可以再跟他去讲一些其他你想要跟他谈的事情。Alrighty, thank you so much. I do not see. Oh, I see another question. Does screen time affect EQ? And how long should the screen time be? Is there any guidance on that?
So that is a good question. And it's really hard because we can't really limit the screen time when it comes to that synchronous learning that we're seeing right now in education. So it's really what are they doing during that screen time is what's important. So if you think about challenges of watching something on YouTube, for example, or the TV, is you end up in like a rabbit hole of doing nothing for hours and accomplishing nothing. So what I always remind my kids is, when they are watching something and you can see them, you can see the shift in posture, by the way, where they're starting to look more tired. They're starting to kind of lose that ability to kind of sit up. They're looking sleepy. And so I remind my kids too that, gosh, you're not very creative watching TV. Really kind of puts a damper on, your imagination, but then you recognize that you start getting tired. So I think that's what's important is what are they doing during that screen time? Because like YouTube is a great example where you can just go, they just load video after video after video. And the next thing you know, they've wasted 2 hours and they don't feel really good about themselves. And so one of the things that I would notice too, it depends on age and stage of your children, but they bicker and argue more when they've watched TV. It's a fact. They see it on TV, they observe it. And what can happen too is kids try on different phrases that they've heard on TV in the wrong context, and it comes across no good. So you have to really kind of think that's screen time, but how are they spending that screen time? So on the flip side of that is if they were having screen time, a Zoom meeting with their friend, but they're laughing and they're talking about things and they're interacting the way they would if they met at a park. That we need to encourage. That strengthens that emotional intelligence because you have to pick up on cues. So the problem is when we look at texting and that main communication of our kids, there is a reason why there was that development of emojis. It's because you could not understand how someone was thinking or feeling via text message or in an email. You couldn't interpret that. And so the problem now is we utilize a lot of emojis. Some of it's to communicate emotion, but some of it's to communicate more sarcasm than it is actual emotion. And that can be very damaging as far as that developing that emotional intelligence. So as far as screen time goes, every family is normed different. And then it really does depend on the school schedule, but it's what does that screen time look like? If it's time where they're not present and they're zoning out and they're not using their brain, then that is not helpful. That is definitely not helpful screen time.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Time flies. It's time for our next speaker. Just do a really quick translation. 所以刚刚呢，就是问到，就是说，那么我们除了智商之外，我们所担心的是情商。那么小孩子在荧幕上面的时间的话，是不是要控制时间的长短呢？那么这个回答主要的就是说，时间长短不是最主要，而是他们在网络上面的时候，他们在看荧幕的时候，他们在做什么。如果他们在荧幕上面前面呢是在跟朋友有联络、有交通，然后有回答什么的，这个就很好。但是如果是说你看到他们基本上呢，好像已经眼睛在看，可是头脑已经不知道跑哪里去，那个已经是不好的现象了。所以最主要的就是说，看他们是不是有继续的在这个荧幕上面前面，还是有跟人家有在互动的这种方面，这个是最主要的。好，谢谢。那我们现在请下一位讲员。So thank you so much, Tonya. That was excellent information. Thank you, thank you. And now, Christine, the time is yours.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to talk about the college applications process, so we are definitely going to shift, our thought process for right now. But I kind of wanted to go into this approach and just kind of really open everybody's views to a different perspective of the college application process. It can be really stressful for students, for parents, kind of everybody involved. School counselors, I'm going to be honest, it can be very stressful, but it's also very fun for us too as well. At least I do have a great time kind of working with students and parents during the whole thing, just because it is exciting. All their hard work over the past, let's say 4 years, coming up to senior year, and then they work on these applications for months and months, and then finally they hit the submit button, and then they wait for a few more months, of course, and then that is when they start seeing those acceptances and everything. So it is exciting. I think the next piece for me tends to be springtime, when they all start coming around. I got accepted here, I got accepted there, and I think overall it is a great experience. But I really want to kind of, my first few slides, kind of go over the 5 things you should really know about the college admission process. And this is all pulled from the College Board, okay? So these are just ideas of what they definitely kind of really want you to open your eyes to and just kind of get a different insight of the whole process. But number one, it's you really can get in. There are so many colleges out there. There's thousands of colleges all over the place, in-state, out-of-state, you name it, private schools, public schools, all over the place. So there's so many different options for you to think about. We tend to kind of really only look at those highly selective schools because the names, right? I think I always ask students, why did you choose this school? Why is this your top choice? And sometimes they just say, I don't know. That's the school that I've always heard about, whether it's about a football team or the medical school or something. But I think it's really important for students and even families to have these discussions of why are you choosing these schools? What is it about this school that is completely standing out than all the rest? But I want you to remember though that fewer than 100 colleges actually are highly selective. So that means that there are so many other options out there. And I'll get into this a little later, but you should open up your options. It should not only be those top schools, highly selective, because when I always look through students and their list of schools, I want to make sure that they have a wide range. One, of course, because they're going to be highly selective for a reason, right? There's hundreds of thousands of applicants that actually go out, applications that go out every single year, and they're increasing like crazy. I think UC Berkeley and UCLA definitely has like the #1 applied to UC right now, and it's over 100,000. It's just, that's a lot of applications to kind of go through. But just, I want to kind of open up that process of thinking of there's just so many colleges out there and you can really get in, okay? The next is you are more than your test score. I always get the questions all the time. The students are always asking me questions about test score, test score, test score, AP scores. What's a perfect AP score? What's a perfect SAT score? What does this school want? What does that school want? You are more than just a score. Yes, there is some minimum requirements, of course, but that's just one foot in the door. There's so many different aspects to a college admission review process than just looking at your test score. So there's so many things beyond that. And especially with the changes, of course, after the pandemic, schools are changing and moving away from the test requirement. They're moving around and seeing that this is not the biggest indicator for a college admissions acceptance. This doesn't determine how well the student is going to be successful in school. So you are more than a test score. I know that's hard to kind of move forward through and kind of not think about, but don't put so much pressure. And I always try to tell students, of course, do your best, study. You do need to study for them, but just try your best and kind of keep moving forward. The next is you are in charge. You are in the driver's seat. Don't make it in your mind that, oh my gosh, I'm never going to fit this criteria for this school, because every school at the end of the day has their own criteria of what they're looking for in an applicant. Think of it as a bunch of different buckets, and they want to put in the students that have the extracurriculars and the community service, and they want to see the students that, financially, fit the criteria for financial aid, definitely scores and GPAs, but then the student that overcame some conflicts and processes through their whole time in high school. So they definitely want to make sure that you are knowing that you are in charge. Just because the decision at the end of the day when you hit submit is theirs doesn't mean that you don't get a choice as well, okay? The next one following after that is you are unique. Every student is completely different than the other. Every applicant is completely different, and that's okay. All right. Just because, you have one student that may be in the top 10, but doesn't mean that the top 25, 50 doesn't have something highlighting them. You have your top student athletes, you have your top student academics, you have the students that are leaders in different aspects. There's so many different areas that you are unique in your own application, and it depends on how much you are describing that stuff in a college application. The last one, what College Board says is you're not in this alone, and I agree with that. There's so many people going through, students with peers can talk to peers, of course, through the stress. Talk to your other teachers. They've seen this every year, especially those senior teachers that are writing those letters of recommendations, of course, but the counselors as well. We are here to hopefully ease that anxiety and ease that stress for you. But also friends have gone through the same experiences, but do not be afraid to ask for help, and do not be afraid to ask help from the admissions as well. I always tell students if they get stuck and they have a specific question, maybe that I won't know, I pick up the phone, I call admissions, I email admissions. It is super easy now, especially with the pandemic going on, that they are making themselves more able to connect to them, and you were able to ask those questions and get that information right pretty quickly. Some of them have like open live chats. I've seen so many different webinars and workshops, and I always try to encourage students to kind of jump into those. So those are definitely just 5 things that you can kind of think about. What is comprehensive review and what the future of the application process is? So, you know, if you've heard of comprehensive review, sometimes they say holistic application process, but that just means that they're looking at more than just your GPA and your transcripts. Okay, yes, we send that off. Of course, that's going to be sent with your application. That is a big indicator. However, there are some schools out there, and there are many schools out there that don't just look at the test scores and the GPA solely. And that doesn't mean that they're in any particular order either. Doesn't mean GPA and test scores hold the biggest value. Some schools actually give the same value to everything across. So this is kind of a list of each of them. It's GPA, test scoring. Most of the schools are going test optional. Like I said, that after the starting of class of 2020, they are holding on to that for the 2021 class, and then they're going to start letting that information out a little bit more for the classes beyond. But I've heard definitely a lot in our counselor workshops that most schools are actually looking at test optional for the future. And they're definitely looking into that research. Number 3 would be performance and numbers of courses beyond the minimum A through G requirements. So A through G classes are kind of like your English, your science, all those classes that kind of give you courses in preparation for college, of course, honors and AP. But what are you doing beyond that minimum requirement? If they're giving you like this, you need 16 courses, this is to fulfill your A through G, but what are you pushing yourself to kind of go beyond that? The next would be your advanced courses, how students are challenging themselves. This doesn't mean to stack classes. If you're not fully prepared to take 6 honors or 6 AP classes, then don't take them, and it's okay. I always try to tell students, where are you at right now? What are your strengths? Let's work towards your strengths. I don't want you to be a part of everything. If you know that English and history are strong suits, then let's go for those. And let's try to increase that every single year. But if you are finding, I always ask students every year of planning for their classes for the next year is, how is your stress level? What do you like studying? What can you handle? Was this the max? Did you have a little bit more time? And same with extracurricular activities. How are you balancing all those things? If you don't want to stack everything, you don't have to. The next piece is college essays, letters of recommendations, extracurricular activities, so inside and outside of school, community service, interviews. So these are just some ideas. This is definitely not all of them though, because other factors do bring in for the college application review process, like financial aid, familial growth and work obligations, maturity, your growth through the time of high school, from what did you look like as a 9th grader to 12th grade year, your determination, your ambition. Those are all those areas that all kind of bring out a comprehensive review process. The next areas is just really what they're looking for. What does a reader actually kind of go through your applications for? What are they identifying? And as you can see right here, number 1, 2, not in any particular order, 3, 4, you have growth and potential, interests and activities, personal character, contribution to, whatever community you're going to be a part of. Those are the immediate areas that they want to make sure that you're being successful. If you are applying to their school, at the end of the day, they want you graduated. They want you to make sure that you are making that impact on their campus. It's not just about the test score. And you'll find this, and these are actually quotes. As you can read them, these are from Harvard, one of your top Ivy League schools. And this is what they're looking for as an applicant. There's so much more that they want to see kind of come out through college essays and your application than just a test score and a transcript and a GPA. They want to know about your character, your leadership, your self-confidence. As they interview you, they just want to get to know who you are. And if you have a good sense of yourself too, I think the best thing is, you know, what have you learned from your interests? Not just what your interests are, but even like your strengths, your weaknesses, you know, what are the things that you need to overcome? That's going to make them really identify and say like, hey, this student really knows themselves a lot and how they're going to be successful on those next steps. After that, it's just kind of where to begin. Where do you begin in the college application process? And what I always try to tell students, and this is from the 9th grade, beginning the 9th grade, actually maybe even 8th grade before, but you wanna research. You wanna research and get organized. You know, for parents, asking your students, you know, what do you wanna do? What do you think you like? And this is not meaning career questions. You know, you can ask them what they want to be, doctors, they want to be lawyers, you know, there's so many different jobs out there. But at the end of the day, it's like, what do you like? Do you like working with people? Do you like working with kids? Do you like working you know, with tools or technology? Those are the questions, because it's not about the job. There's so many different pieces of having a job that, you know, you need to understand yourself and what those strengths are. But getting organized and researching, of course, before you start the high school journey, is knowing your school, knowing the high school that you're going to. What are the programs that are involved there? What kind of clubs are offered at your school? What kind of support services are at your school? The opportunities of classes, definitely higher levels. If you really want to challenge yourself in those honors, AP classes, what are the programs that your school offers? And kind of mock up, you know, a pretend like schedule or a 4-year plan. And definitely you do that with your counselor as a 9th grader, and kind of coming in, you kind of identify those. Creating a resume and a brag sheet is definitely something that I always tell students to do as well, because you want to track those extracurriculars, definitely in the beginning of the 9th grade year, at least so they're fresh in your mind, you don't forget about them. So, you know, whether you have like a folder, a college folder, agenda, something that putting together, like marking those hours down and marking those involvements that you've been in and identifying those strengths. Writing down your deadlines, and these are for juniors and seniors. You should start the process as a junior. Springtime juniors need to be writing those lists. What are my top choices? You know, and then you start funneling down and going into, okay, these are the schools that I'm actually going to apply to, because beginning of senior year in August, these applications open. You know, some of them, the UC application opens up August 1st. So those are the ones that are going to be ready to go. And you want to have the idea, because whenever I sit with students and have my meetings with my seniors in about September, beginning of September, some students don't have their lists finalized. So it is important that you have that finalized list. You could still work on it and add on to it, of course, that's no problem, but definitely have a list. Get familiar with early action and early decisions if you choose to apply early. Create a reach, target, and safety school. And this could be the help with the counselor as well. I do this with students all the time. I try to create data and look at data through, you know, our portals. San Marino High School use what we call Naviance. And I can pull data of students that have applied to schools for the past 5 years. And I can pull that up and say, well, if you want to just look at solely data, you know, where you fall into these and what are the schools that, you know, students have, your peers have actually applied to. But creating that reach and target and safety schools list, that wide variety. And then request your letters of recommendation early and in a timely manner. You want to give those teachers an opportunity to make sure that they're writing something about you in a great light. You know, you don't want to come out to them, you know, say, you know, Mr. So-and-so, I need a letter of recommendation due tomorrow. You know, you don't want to kind of do that, because then they're rushing through the process. I like to look at students' information and know where they're applying to. How am I writing this letter to give them the best light? So those are just some tips and some tools for the college application process. And some resources. A lot of it is, honestly, I use College Board a lot, Big Future, but definitely using the school individual websites, portals, social media accounts, follow them. They are putting a lot of information out online. They're offering webinars, workshops for all students, all grade levels, and they're doing such a great job, especially with the pandemic, of trying to just be super candid and available and approachable. Mm-hmm. And I know I had a couple Q&A questions, I think.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have a Q&A question now. So if you want to post your Q&A question, we are looking forward to anybody with a question. 所以我们现在呢，就是让大家有机会来问答的时候，如果您有想要问的，请您就到 Q&A 那个地方去打一下。
I know I had some email, so I wanted to see if I can just answer those at least.
Sure,
I have 3 of them,
that's awesome.
So I can read those off. So hopefully you can get some information. But it says, the first question was, can my child not send her subject test scores with her college application? So at this time, it's always good. It's never a disadvantage if students don't share those test scores and stuff, because from the fall of 2021, most schools are actually test optional. So that's really going to be up to you if you want to send it to those schools. So I always tell students, it's going to be up to you. That is your choice. However, there are some areas, especially with subject tests, that if you're looking at a competitive school and you're looking at a competitive major, you might want to send those off, depending on, if you're comfortable with your score to be shown, because that's what they are going to look at it and they are going to consider it. So I leave it to the student for the most part for if they want to share those scores. But those are some ideas and kind of tips if a school is impacted, if it's competitive and you're applying to a subject that is competitive. Okay.
好 ，So a quick translation. 所以现在呢，第一个问题就是说，我需不需要把我这个孩子，比如说他哪一科特别的这个成绩显示出来啊？这个实际上是看您自己，就是说你的孩子呢，他是不是想要特别显示说，比如说他是在某一科上面很强，然后刚刚好他要去的这个大学就是在这个系上面特别有名。如果是这样子的话，那把你那一科特别显示出来是好的，这个完全是看你个人的决定。Alrighty, we do have a question on the Q&A that says, can we get a copy of your PowerPoint, please?
Yeah, I think we shared it, and then I'm sure it can be emailed out.
Okay, we'll take care of that arrangement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
所以如果
想要 Yes， 所以如果想要今天这个讲座里头的题材的话，我们到时候可以用电脑上面去回答您哈，给您这个资料。Alrighty, let me see if there is another question. I don't see it.
I have 2 more on my end.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You have 2 more. Perfect. Please go ahead.
Emailed to us prior, so I just wanted to make sure I got those. The second question was, what's the impact of the future application process? So like I said before, it is really that comprehensive, holistic review process that they're looking at multiple factors as opposed to just a GPA and an SAT score. It's just a different perspective to really look at it. I think students and parents and families really put a lot of pressure on those 2 things, but there's so much more to an application. But if you think about it, after the pandemic, and colleges even said this during the counselor workshops, is they're now being forced to do it, to look at the comprehensive review and the holistic process. So it's good. They haven't really changed. I want to say in the past 5 years is where the comprehensive review process really started. But for 50 years, they haven't really changed the college admission process. So it's really good that they're opening their eyes to something a little bit more and kind of open to change. So you're going to see a lot of changes in these next couple of years. But unfortunately, not all the answers are going to be out there. But don't hesitate to ask questions. I mean, counselors are in workshops in the beginning of each year.
Thank you. And quick translation. 所以就是说，如果说我有一些特别的问题的话，我是不是也需要就是说去问？那这个会不会影响到我在这个申请大学的这个过程呢？他说，实际上呢，你不用担心，因为实际上不管你在问的是什么问题呢，他们能够协助你这个过程的话，你就去直接去问就好了。So I know you have another question that you're addressing. Okay.
Yeah, there was a specific question about says my daughter took her AP Bio subject test in her 9th grade and got a 700. Later, she planned on, after finishing her AP Bio class, another college bio class. She would retake the bio subject test score. Unfortunately, the test got canceled, of course, due to the pandemic, probably no other chance to retake it in the future. I want to know if it's okay to submit her test score with her application, or she can simply choose not to submit her test score. Would this 700 test score negatively affect her application? I think for that, again, it's kind of like the first one. It's okay to submit a test score, you know, and then especially in an application, there is room in an application where it says, is there anything else that we might need to know about? And you can utilize those kind of summary areas to type in and say, as a freshman, I had the opportunity to take an AP or a bio subject test, SAT test, and this is what I got. However, I was trying to retake the test because I took AP bio, I got more knowledge, I was super comfortable with the subject. However, due to the pandemic, you know, X, Y, and Z happened. The colleges know that they are being canceled left and right. We completely know that. And they are gonna they're gonna like put the student in the best light. So it's okay to submit that 700 score, knowing and explaining that she was really trying to do the others, okay? We also are looking at AP scores. I mean, for her to challenge after the AP bio, she should challenge the AP exam. Anytime that you take an AP course, you definitely want to challenge that AP bio exam if it's ready for you. But it's not going to negatively affect her too if you don't submit it. So it is dependent on the student, though. That is definitely one thing.
Thank you. We actually have 3 questions now, so I'll do a quick translation and then go right into these questions.
Yeah.
所以呢，刚刚就是他讲的这个第3个问题，就是说，如果我的孩子的成绩是700分，实际上这个并不是在我们的理想之内，我们是不是也得给学校知道？他说这个是在于您哈。如果说你想让学校知道，然后你有一个特别的解释的话，那么就送进去。但是如果不想让那个学校你在申请的学校知道，你不送进去也是可以的。Alrighty, so one of the questions is, well, because of the pandemic, my children are not able to showcase their sports talents. So what do we do about that?
I think, you know, explaining that, whether the students explain that in their essays or in those additional comment sections, they understand that. The same thing with community service, that students are really trying to do that, but, you know, and trying to kind of be involved in everything. But I think the schools are really trying to kind of keep the connection going. There's so many different unique ways. I think I was telling a student not too long ago is, how are you still connecting to your team, you know, during this time? And it could be just by fun activities online and trying something new and keeping us connected, and study groups or something to kind of push through our time. So I think it's just try to be unique during that, but definitely explain those pieces. But they know that we can't compete outside. They know that they can't, you know, do league matches and CIF and everything, which is unfortunate. But, you know, I would say almost try to get a little bit creative with how you're still keeping yourself connected, whether it's taking yourself to the park and working out and still kind of keeping that. If you enjoy that and if that's your passion, I mean, keep going with it. But definitely for community service too. I mean, there's places that are doing it at a social distancing.
Thank you. For the sake of time, I'm going to actually move on to the questions, and we'll keep it English only, and I'll put in the translation in the Chinese chat room. 因为时间的关系，所以我现在呢就是直接先用英文问其他的2个问题，然后我们得到下一个讲员了哈。So we have the next question is, when does the college calculate the GPA, from grade 9 or 10?
It's a good question. So they will look at freshman year classes. Of course, you have to be passing those courses with C's or above. But they actually calculate 10 through 12. So a lot of schools, what they call is A through G calculations for the GPA. So it tends to be 10 through 12. But if you think about it, when you apply for college, it's really 10 and 11 is what they're seeing. Not saying that the freshman year does not calculate and, you know, it doesn't matter or anything. I don't want to say that at all, but just making sure that each school is just very different on the calculated GPA. There are some schools that want cumulative, which means 9th through 12th, but like the UCs and the CSUs do take A through G, they're A through G, 10 through 12. So it's just be mindful of those. I think students always ask those questions about you know, my senior year, my GPA is going to change. Well, I mean, it could if you have some balancing to do, but if you're still averaging it out, you know, the biggest impact times is to start school strong. And then if you do find yourself in like a dip in GPA or anything, or maybe a hard semester, what are you doing right after that? You know, how are you fixing that? How are you offsetting those grades to just really grow that GPA? But it's definitely more 10 through 12 GPAs what they're looking at.
Thank you. And one final question for a quick answer, please. And that is, what do you do when my choice as a parent is different than my child's choice for the school, for the college?
That is definitely a good question. I think there's a lot of students that come in that my mom wants me, you know, my parents want me to apply X, Y, and Z, but I want some of this. I think at the end of the day, I try to tell students and even parents, I mean, it's the student that is going to the college. It's going to be them on the campus and connecting to the school and trying to make that community and stuff. So it's okay to have those, you know, choices in there, but to force a student is going to add more stress and anxiety, you know, to force them to go somewhere that, you know, they are not feeling that, because every individual is so different. I think for example, my parent wanted me to go somewhere else, but I knew a smaller school was going to be more beneficial to me because I knew my learning style was completely different. So have these conversations soon and early with your child. It shouldn't be a confrontation, you know, during their senior year, because it's already stressful enough. So I think a balance of that is going to be the best.
Thank you so much. So without further ado, we have our next lined up, Melissa. If you can take over, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa. I'm Annie Brassard's daughter, and I had the opportunity of attending my school, Oberlin College and Conservatory, in person this past semester. And so I'm here to answer some questions about what campus life was like during a pandemic and sort of the testing procedures and everything that was going on in the last couple of months.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you for joining us. And then we're just happy you share with us about your campus life. It is a very different life. We're just wondering what happened right now in the campus. Like, do you need to do anything special when you go back to the campus? Do you need to take COVID test or a flu shot or anything?
So Oberlin has its first week for testing, and then there's a week of quarantine where no classes are necessarily going on, but you're waiting for test results, and just they're trying to stabilize the campus to make sure there's no outbreaks with everybody coming back to campus at the same time. In terms of socializing, people were still hanging out with each other, but seemed to be careful about adhering to the school's COVID guidelines, which they were pretty strict about enforcing. And some of these guidelines were that only 2 people could enter your dorm at a time with 6 feet of social distancing. And there were still some gatherings of people, but they would have to be pretty distanced and typically outdoors. Also, they had a policy where parties and really large gatherings in an enclosed space were not permitted, and there were some cases of students being sent home because they were not adhering to these guidelines, and the school had this very strict policy where they would give them 24 hours to leave campus. So everybody really knew that the school was taking this seriously, so people were hesitant to go against the guidelines. In terms of acceptable gatherings, I know that people would eat together outside on the grass in the fall, but would maintain a distance. And also, Oberlin has this policy where you are required to get a test for COVID every month. So during the semester, Oberlin would test 25% of the entire school each week, and therefore that means 1 test per person per month. And you can register for that online, actually. So they made it a really simple procedure and process for everyone, where they also tested people in the field house. And it was a very it was a very simple process where you would just have to fill out a form, wait in line. It was never crowded when I went to get tested. And it really worked for people. Like you could choose a good time for your schedule, and they would make it really accessible to faculty and students. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was that they would have a daily symptom survey emailed to you. So every morning when you wake up, there's an email from Oberlin, and you get to answer some questions about any symptoms you might be experiencing, how you're feeling, your temperature, if you were to record it. I still get those emails every day, even though I'm not on campus right now. So those students were, they were sort of recommended to fill that out every day. And if you were to put that you were experiencing some sort of COVID symptoms, then they would give you a call and discuss if you needed some assistance, if you needed to quarantine. I never had any COVID symptoms while at school, so I never had to mark my survey that way.
Wow, this is a very different campus life. I imagine that like you have gone through a lot. So with this kind of like stressful situation, I'm just wondering like how the school support the student. Do they have any counseling service or any like things that help the student to cope with this stress?
So yeah, the Oberlin Counseling Center does remote services over Zoom to any registered students on campus or living in Ohio. Because of state licensing, they don't offer these services to students in other states. But I think if you were at home and you needed some counseling service recommendations from Oberlin while you were still a student, you could probably call and they would direct you to some resources. I know that there was a number to schedule a counseling or psychiatric appointment with the Oberlin Counseling Services. And they also have a crisis hotline, and they have appointments for emergencies provided daily. And also, I think Oberlin had this had a similar system with counseling and their counseling center without the pandemic going on. So the only main change with the pandemic was that these services were remote and online. And I wasn't using these services this semester, but I know that they were available to students. What I do know is that teachers were more lenient about classroom assignments, and if you needed an extension, teachers would be really understanding, and they would really try to work with their students because the teachers are also going through it where they have to teach online. Everything is, all the communication is either on a screen or in emails. So most of my teachers were really eager to help students during this time.
Well, glad to hear that. Yeah. So at least there's some support services at school. Well, last but not least, I want to ask you, I don't know whether you share with, well, for yourself and among your like classmates or friends, like how do you want your family to support you guys during this time when you are so far away and then when be around you and everything is so different? So do you think about that?
Oh yeah. I think in terms of socializing, as I mentioned, I had a really good social circle on campus, and even though we weren't able to participate in the same activities as maybe we would have if there wasn't a pandemic, I was still able to connect with people at school, and I never felt truly isolated during my time on campus. But I know that it's also good to connect with family during that time, and a lot of my friends would call their parents a lot and just check in and just talk about their daily lives. I think that can be important if you're going through a hard time, to just know you have people at home who are thinking about you and who want the best for you. I mean, there's lots of things you could do, even without a pandemic going on. There's still going to be that separation from the family. So some students might appreciate care packages, I guess. But for me, just seeing my family over Zoom every once in a while was really nice and helpful, and it helped me stay connected.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Yeah, hopefully like your sharing can encourage all these like parents how they are doing to prep their kids for the college life. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And like Sophia, this is your I'll give you back time.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That was really wonderful to hear. And I can see, as especially parents with children in college, we worry how the college is keeping things safe. And your experience and your description kind of make us feel a little more assured, because they do check in with you on a daily basis. With waking up with that email, that was very assuring to hear. Thank you, Melissa.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And also, I thank you, Queenie, for preparing and answering those questions or addressing those questions that we have. At this time, we are open for general questions and answer for just a little bit. And if there isn't, then we're going to be concluding. Would there be any special questions that you would like to ask? Please go ahead and put it in the Q&A. 所以呢，刚刚我们已经听到了哈，因为 Melissa 她自己是在大学里头，那么她就跟我们解释一下她现在这个大学生活。那么我们很开心的就是说，知道实际上现在这些大学学生们里头，他们的这个学区的生活也是很安全，因为学校每一天都会问他们的身体状况怎么样，所以这个是很重要的。那么我们现在就看看，如果有什么人有问题的话，我看看啊。好，如果没有的话，before I conclude, Annie, is there anything you would like to specifically address and announce before I conclude?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I just want to thank you, all the our wonderful speakers. It's really an honor to have you with us to support all the family in this community. I just want to make a quick comment, especially to Tonya about the EQ and the mental health. I think that really I can resonate that the engagement, family engagement activity with children is really the top #1, not so much the academic. And again, the connection, building the connection first, is I think is ultimately the foundation to together pass this pandemic, especially today, starting tonight. So just a really quick example to resonate Tanya's thoughts about the talk about the connection with family engagement or activity, play cards. Like this morning when I woke up, we knew today's our house cleaning day. Instead of say, I have a junior high kids at home. Instead of say, hey, you're gonna clean this, you clean that. I started with, hey, Jacob, how was the F1? My son like F1 racing, and he would spend a lot of time watching with his friends. I think this is healthy because he like to talk with friends, it's connected. Instead of telling him to clean the house, I started with how about the F1? And he's smiling and responding and say, yes, it was a great. So whatsoever, the car racer got a #1 or he got a COVID. We had a great conversation. So he was smiling to me, happily share about the winners. So that's the beginning of the day. We start like that. And I think that the starting day connecting children is really a nice way. Every day is challenging, it's difficult, but starting the first thing to do and connecting our children eye to eye level, heart to heart, and it's a really great a success for me today. I just want to share. Thank you, Tonya, for all your wonderful sharing. Okay. So,
thank you so
ahead.
much. Yes. And before I do my final announcements, any special discussion from also Tina or Queenie? Again, thank you both so much for making today's event happen. Okay, if not, I want to just let everybody know as well, the Q&A portion translated into Chinese is now available. So allow me to say a few words in Chinese. 所以呢，刚刚我们因为要肯定说我们的时间够哈，所以呢，最后有2个问题没有直接的翻译。 但是呢，现在已经都翻译在您这个 chat 里头了，所以您可以去看看那个问题跟他的那个答案。那么现在呢，在我们在今天有30几家的家庭参与就是说不算我们这些工作人员之外，所以我们真的很高兴您都能够来参与我们今天的这个会。So I want to first of all thank the 30 plus families that have come and joined us today in our Zoom conference, not including us, the panelists or the speakers. So thank you so much for being with us. And as you can see, we really are trying to work with the times. So some of you may have already enjoyed our beginning of the year when we had our Chinese New Year celebration, and we had at that time the celebration in person. And some of you may recall after that, we shared with you some of the funding that we gathered. We supported the Wuhan at that time, the beginning of the COVID pandemic. And ever since then, we have transitioned to now supporting, because now the US is the most affected, and we have used our funding and the donations to purchase both surgical masks as well as KN95 masks. And then we also built face shields. We purchased materials so the children can continue to volunteer and provide resource to the community. With all that said, as I have just announced in the beginning of this Zoom meeting, that we are going to be having our February 21st virtual gala, again, free to everyone. We do want to let you know there will be raffle prizes as well. But our main thing is, yes, we want to continue to raise funds to be able to do crisis relief. So with the coming year, we don't know what's going to be ahead. But every year we provide funding and we relieve for crisis to our community and at large. So that will be something that we would love for you to come and join. And of course, there are many ways to help in terms of donating. You can donate by simply going to our website, www.emwpec.com. East meets West, Parent Education Club.com. And then there is donate button right there. In the emails, you will also receive the donate button. But in addition to that, there are some creative ways. In-kind donation. Yes, we're looking forward to auction items. So for online auction items, if you have something you would like to donate, whether it could be a vacation package or it could be some kind of a golf lesson, or it could be a whole big beauty pack, whatever it is that you would like to donate, it will be part of what we're going to be doing. Online auction is so much fun. And so we hope that you will also consider doing that for our February 21st. Alrighty, with that said, I want to say thank you all once again. 我们2月21号记得一起来参加。那么我们除了就是说募款来帮助我们身边的人，甚至那个时候年初我们帮助武汉我们也希望就是说除了募款，您如果想要捐东西的话，我们也一样可以很乐意接受。Alrighty, thank you all. I wish you a beautiful and very safe week ahead. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.